That's it.
Welcome to the Digitally Dreaming Off the Gridiron podcast. Here's your host, Oscar Lee. I'm joined with my co-host with the most, fellow 49ers fantasy football extraordinaire, Sulman Haque. Sulman, how you doing today?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Going all right, going all right. So yeah, Joan Bark, let's go ahead and start off with the free agency madness for the Niners. Obviously like I said, a shitload of fucking free agent signing this week. And obviously, a lot of departures as well. So let's just kind of get right into it. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy Ward are both departing from the Niners. Charles Omenihu, right? Charles Omenihu, and obviously, so kind of, and the free agent acquisition, some of the marquee names just off the list. We got obviously Javon Hargrave from the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to talk about his deal as well, and obviously DeForest Buckner's reaction to that deal. And obviously we also got Isaiah Oliver, the nickel cornerback from the Atlanta Falcons, top 10 in PFF ranking last year. So yeah, actually, let me throw it to you. So kind of, what was your, I guess, what is your overall, I guess, impression or grade for the free agency week for the Niners, and kind of, who really stuck out to you most on both sides, losses and acquisitions?
Yeah, I think the Niners, they did a good job of kind of filling in some needs. Obviously, getting that line stronger. They know, their defense is all about, making that line stronger. So I would say for this week, what we've seen them do, I'd give them a solid B on in terms of what they've done. Obviously, the guys we lost, Jimmy, we knew he was out of there. Everything pointed to Jimmy Ward leaving as well. I think he's replaceable. Jimmy Ward is replaceable. I mean, especially now that you got Gibson and Hufanga on the safety spots, and then you signed Isaiah Oliver here to come in and take that nickel spot. So and you have Samuel Womack, so you got two guys that could potentially play nickel. You got Lenore playing outside corner. I think losing Mosley hurt a little bit. I mean, but he's coming off an ACL tear. But
but let me stop you there, because I think even though he came off an ACL tear, $6 million for a 1-year contract is kind of head scratching when you really think about kind of the cap space we have and what we could have afforded to maybe bring him back. I mean, it didn't seem like that big of an investment.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't know. Maybe they were just like, hey, all right, we bring him back 1 year, and then maybe they just had a sour taste in their mouth with what happened with Verrett, right? And he gets hurt again. So maybe they didn't want to do that. And I think they're pretty comfortable with Lenore at the outside. So let's see. The draft will tell us how comfortable they are. I don't think they'll take a corner in the draft, but we'll see. We'll follow this a little closer. Let's see, who else did we lose here? McGlinchey. Thank God he's gone.
Yes, sir. Thank God.
he was a great fit for Shanahan's run blocking scheme in this offense, but obviously, I don't know, man. I don't know what's up. Like, how can you be that big and just be on your ass every time a guy's running straight through you, right? I just don't get it. I mean, don't hate him, didn't love him, but he could have been better. But let's see, what Colton Makovitz is, the guy who's going to replace him. Let's see what he brings to the table. He was pretty solid when he got in there at left tackle for a couple of games like a year or two ago. So I think, overall, Niners lost guys. Obviously, we knew guys they're going to lose. I mean, Aziz Al-Shahir, another guy. But, these are guys that they can easily replace through draft and free agency. In terms of guys they picked up, Hargraves, obviously, great pickup. A little bit of a head scratcher in terms of the money we gave him, given that, Bosa's due. But it seems like, Parag working his cap magic there, right? He's keeping the cap hits small in the first year. He's kind of backloading it, giving the Niners out. So when you initially see that contract, you're like, oh man, he got that 4-year, 80 million. Damn.
84 million. Yeah.
84 million, right? Yeah. And you're like, damn, he got paid. But then when you look at the details, you're like, okay, he got somewhat paid, but it's not as, as much guarantee, things like, I mean, I think he got 44 million guaranteed, but like the guarantees are spread out. It's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, DeForest Buckner was like, shit, man, you could have paid me that money. I would have stayed. So, so yeah, it's a little bit of a head scratcher. 4 years later, you basically sign a guy to replace DeForest Buckner when you could have just signed DeForest Buckner, right? At that time. And people are like, oh, that was 4 years ago. We didn't have the cap room. We didn't know, blah, blah, blah. We had the cap room. We just decided we couldn't pay 2 defensive linemen. Now we've decided we can do that, right? I mean, Armstead's hit is less and things like that. But I think the Niners just said, hey, we got to invest heavy. The D-line is the motor of this defense. We get to the quarterback, other good things happen. So I think they just realized, hey, we got to go all in on that line. So Yeah, I mean, he was a good pickup. I like the pickup of Cleveland Farrell. You know, a reclamation project guy who was a top 5 pick. So I think Chris Kasura can kind of work his magic there. Isaiah Oliver, another good pickup there on the defense. And then I think that's that. And then Sam Darnold, solid QB3 that we picked up here, given the money he got. I don't know what other options could have been. I guess Baker, but I think I'd rather take my chances with Darnold over Baker, given how polarizing a figure Baker is and how terrible of a locker room guy he is. So I like it. Darnold, kind of gives you some insurance in case, Purdy can't come back, Lance kind of fails, but maybe a vet who can just kind of get you there and not make too many mistakes.
100%. I agree with all your points. I think some other kind of key losses. Daniel Brunskill, right? Another lineman who was kind of a cornerstone of the line. Rand Carthon, obviously, they have that relationship there in Tennessee. Rand Carthon, obviously, giving high praises. And it kind of sucks when you see all these other teams with former, executive admin staff of the Niners or former head coaches or head coaches who were former coaches of the Niners trying to poach all the players. So,
Yep.
I did see 49ers faithful on Twitter kind of, he kind of voiced their I guess you could say, there I lightly put it a displeasure with that, right? So and then also, I mean, Aziz, right? I think Demetrius Flanagan-Fowl is a great kind of great kind of replacement for Aziz. And then obviously Samson Ebukam, right? I was kind of bummed when Samson and Charles both left. I thought we would retrain one or the other. But I do think hopefully Clement Farrell and obviously a combination of Hargraves and Farrell should definitely, make up, if not, more than compensate for that. I think ultimately now the only question is really around depth, right? And so if the depth is pretty much, if the depth is if we're able to figure that out in the draft, or we're able to add more kind of solid, depth pieces in this free agency, then I think that will definitely bode well, right? But I think ultimately, it's going to come down to kind of, Lynch has already freed up $9.5 million of cap space, and I think we still have, right, I think around 9.5, so dead cap, and I'm not sure if he's still looking to make any moves or, what's the next kind of play here, but I do think it's going to be interesting to see kind of what the Niners do from here. And we're going to get in the draft in a bit, but I do think, and I think from the acquisition side, I really like the acquisitions. Obviously, Darius Slay, I think Philadelphia wasn't just going to part ways with him. Obviously, he resigned with Philly. There's a reason for that. And I think ultimately Jimmy G in Las Vegas, that relationship with McDaniels is great. But it's gonna look great, for my fellow Raiders fans and your friends like our mutual friend Colin, guest the show, right? Colin, all right, shout out, Mr. 4040 Vision Pod, right? He's definitely not hyped at all for that signing. So, but never know. I mean, Jimmy's a winner. Even though the stats aren't gaudy, he wins games, and with the right coaching staff in place, he could probably make some noise happen. I mean, we'll see. So, hey, let me to be continued. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Niners might be done making moves here in free agency just because now they got to save that cap space for the draft class, things like that. But they can always make room, right? You restructure guys, you move money. It's not a big deal. So if there's someone out there they want to go get, they have enough cap space to go get some depth pieces. And a guy I think they should definitely look at is maybe Cameron Brate if he comes pretty cheap. Add him, to back up Kittle over there, solid tight end, pass catching guy. I think he's in a lot of good depth there if he comes cheap.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. So, like you said, so let's get into the draft, obviously. I think they're going to prioritize more line depth, right? Because of obviously the Brunskill and, the McGlinchey kind of departures. I mean, that's definitely going to hurt. So, they're definitely going to prioritize those in the third rounds. And I think in the fifth rounds, they're probably going to look for a backup time, like I said, Zach Kunson, out of Old Dominion, right? Who, I guess, do you have a mock draft set, and who do you kind of have in that mock draft?
Yeah. I just waste my time on PFF and doing those mock draft simulations for whatever reason. But I think there's a couple of guys there, at least on the offensive line, that should be there in the third round. There's a guy out of BYU named Blake Freeland.
Hmm.
He's pretty solid. He's 6'8", 305 pounds. He's a little bit of a work in progress, but I think he could definitely come in, give him that depth behind Makovitz at right tackle. You got a guy coming out of North Dakota State, Cody Mach. He's 6'6", 303 pounds. He's also a candidate there. You have guys like Tyler Steen, Luke Haggard. These are all guys that can be had in the third, somewhere between the third and fifth rounds. So these are all guys that I think they would look at. and think about, adding them here through the draft. Obviously, I think they might be also looking at corner and linebacker here. Uh, Guys in terms of cornerbacks. I mean, this is a deep cornerback class. You have someone like Riley Moss that they could look at. They got someone like Travius Hodges Tomlinson out of TCU they could look at as a nickel guy, maybe. There's just a ton of cornerbacks that they could take a look at. Darius Rush is another guy that I like. He's 6'2", 200 pounds out of South Carolina. So a bunch of corners that they could think about, if either they want to improve that. I think they're probably looking at guys that could improve the outside depth. So I don't think they're taking a 5'9" corner that can play in the nickel because they already got that with Samuel Womack, and maybe they view Isaiah Oliver as that guy. Maybe they view Isaiah Oliver as an outside guy, but I think definitely you need to take maybe like a guy like Darius Rush to kind of solidify the depth there at corner. Let's see, linebackers. I think a lot of good linebackers also in this draft. There's a guy here, I think like Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati. He looks pretty solid. A guy like Cam Jones, just kind of bigger linebackers that can kind of just play, that third, the third linebacker in the scheme when needed, things like that, be special teamers, things. I don't think they have to reach for someone and like trade up, but someone that's there in the third or fifth round, right? I think that's kind of their sweet spot. They know how to draft there. So those would be kind of the guys I'd be looking at in the third and fifth rounds. And obviously, like you mentioned, backup tight ends if we don't sign one. Again, another deep draft in tight end position, right? You got, you mentioned Zach Kuntz. There's Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. There's guys like Davis Allen. All these guys, man, they're 6'6", like 250. So they're big guys out there. Josh Weil out of Cincinnati, all guys that they could take in the later rounds. Maybe if a guy like Darnell Washington falls to the third round, I don't think he will, but if he does, that's another guy they could look at. Just, man, if you look at this tight end class, I would say like the top 10 tight ends, they're all like 6'5" plus. It's insane how big these guys are now. So I think, yeah, those are kind of the guys I'm looking at. Those are positions I'm looking at in terms of my, if I'm mocking it and I'm looking at what the Niners are looking at. I think that's probably the positions. Yeah, you can maybe see him take a kicker like Jake Moody out of Michigan to replace Robbie Gould there. Maybe they go younger there. So yeah, I think those are kind of the areas they're looking at. I don't think they're going to add much. Maybe they'll add a late seventh rounder on the defensive line. I think they'll probably trade up. They'll consolidate a little bit of draft picks. I think they have 11 right now. So I think they'll look to add maybe 7 or 8 guys and trade around a little bit as well.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think that's a great, solid kind of draft class. I mean, I'm not really gonna debate you on any of those picks. I think what you brought up, obviously, the line is definitely a priority. The cornerback depth as well as priority. Maybe or maybe not if Gold resigns, I mean, maybe it's just good to kind of build for the future because we saw what happened when Mitch tried to kick last year and that was not pretty. So
it was not.
No. And so, I do think, like you said, yeah, I mean, also, the backup tight end, Zach, many others, so I think, yeah, I mean, I agree with your picks. And, we'll see, I mean, like you said, if they're done free agency, then we'll see what they do with that cap space. I mean, maybe, before the trade or after the trade deadline, maybe when the season starts, maybe they're going to, look for waivers and see who else they can get. Lynch and Shanahan can work the magic there. I mean, I'm just excited for this offseason. Not excited. I mean, I'm excited. The offseason has already been exciting, but I'm excited to see, actually, let's talk about our offseason headline. Kind of what we talked about with Sam Darnold. Kind of a lot of what I'm seeing on Twitter is this kind of notion that, Trey has not yet proved himself and Darnold can definitely take that starting position if Trey is not able to show any signs of progression this camp. What is your take right now on the current QB situation? Obviously, Brock had his surgery successful, but he's probably not going to be ready for until maybe week 4 to week 6-ish, to be fully ready for rehab and everything. So what is your take on the current QB situation and who are you expecting to be the week 1 starter when the season starts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Trey's job to lose, right? In terms of until Brock Purdy shows he's healthy and he can play, maybe they go back to Brock. But I think the Niners are in a tough spot here, man.
Yeah.
You want Trey to ball out, and if Trey is not balling out, that's gonna be a problem, right? That's it. That's the end of Trey's time with the Niners. That we're gonna move on from that guy. So I think, Trey has to ball out. I think they're penciling him in here at QB1. Sam Darnold's going to be QB2. I think maybe they draft a rookie like Clayton Tune or Stenson Bennett or Malik Cunningham in the later round, someone like that, just to get a camp arm, move him to a practice squad once Purdy comes back, that kind of stuff. So I think they'll take a late round guy. And that's the thing, right? Like, I don't see in any shape or form this being a QB battle going into training camp.
Yeah.
It like Shanahan should make that clear on this. Darnold like somehow wows them in camp, and Trey Lance is just looking like crap. But I think it should be pretty clear cut that Trey Lance is the starter. It's his job to lose. He has to like really be horrendous for you not to go with him, and then you cut your losses, man. If Darnold is starting week 1, you better be trading Trey. So you know that's like if Trey has fallen that far that Sam Darnold starting over him, you I think you got to trade him, or don't let people know Sam Darnold starting week 1 and you just make a trade. You trade, sometime in the before week 1 happens, and move on and let Sam Darnold roll until Purdy's healthy, and that's kind of the way you go. But I think Trey will show him he can ball out, right? I mean, there's things he can do that, yes, he's been hurt, he's been injured, he hasn't gotten a chance to fully play in the system. He hasn't had a chance to play in like 3 years. That dude hasn't played like real football. So I think he can, if he shows that, weeks 1, 2, I don't know how long Purdy's gonna be out or how long they might decide that, we'll let Lance run the offense and let him play. But if we see, I think if Lance balls out the first 1 to 2 weeks with the Purdy out, I think Shanahan's gonna have to make a really tough choice. Do I go back to Purdy, guy coming off a elbow injury, or do I stay with Lance? And if Lance is balling, I think you stay with him, and you let Purdy be QB2, and that's the way you write it, right? I know Purdy played and performed, and he took you to an NFC Championship game, but if Lance is balling, it's hard to go off him, right? So I think it's a problem, especially if Lance is balling. It's a big problem. Less of a problem if Lance doesn't look the part, he doesn't look good, and then you're like, okay, we'll ride Darnold until Purdy's fully healthy to come on board, and then it's a little bit of an easier solve, right? If Lance looks terrible.
And so I think kind of with that, kind of the point of kind of what you just said, and kind of with the question, and kind of, with the current situation being what it is, I think obviously, Sam Darnold last year, he went 4-2 as a starter. He had, say, I think what they said 7-6, but it was 4-2 as a starter. He threw 7 touchdowns and 3 picks. He threw for over 1,100 yards, and then he threw and he ran for 2 other additional touchdowns. So he's proven he can win games in the NFL. Trey obviously does not have a strong enough sample size yet to basically, have that same confidence. But I think there are some similarities between kind of the 49ers situation as well as the Packers situation, in the sense that, you look at Aaron Rodgers, he's out the door, and you look at Jordan Love, and you look at a Trey Lance, right? And you basically have these 2 unproven rookies, who basically are in situations, with, above average coaching staffs, especially imported to San Francisco with Trey, with more than above average coach staff turns kind of, being a QB guru and working to like with offensive, different offensive players and resurrecting their careers in Kyle Shanahan. But I think that there's something to be said about, how, I guess, how well he can tailor the playbook to Trey's needs. Because I think one of the issues that we saw last year was that Kyle trusted Trey too much as a runner, a little bit too much as a runner. And you saw what happened when he tried to run the power sweep, up the middle, like Josh Allen, in Buffalo. And I think if he's able to cater a playbook similar to Brock Purdy for Trey, I think Trey may be able to thrive a little bit more. But then again, Brock Purdy has moxie, in my opinion. I mean, there's something about Brock Purdy that's a little bit different, even though the arm strength is not the best, like a Trey who has like a cannon arm. I think there's obviously that it factor, right, with Brock. But to your point, if Trey is able to figure it out and start rolling and keep rolling, get the Niners in playoff contention, then there's not much more to be said, right, about the QB competition. Like Harbaugh said, you go with the hot hand. He said that 11 years ago, right? And the final 49ers, they made a Super Bowl with that guy, right? So, I mean,
Yep.
yeah, and it's interesting, right? I mean, there's so many different ways this situation and scenario can play out. And, for me personally as a fan, I'm excited to have 3 young quarterbacks actually right now, because Darnold's been in the league for a minute, but he's only 25 years or 26 years old. He's going to be 26 this year, and he's been in the league for almost 6 years. So, I mean, it's nice to have some veteran kind of, leadership, and, you're not really going to get Patrick Mahomes every time, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it shapes out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just say that Jordan Love's situation is a little bit better than Lance's because he doesn't have, the looming threat of someone else, right? Once Rodgers is gone, it's Love's team, right? Versus for Lance, it's like, well, Purdy comes back. What's going to happen? Am I going to still be the QB? Is Purdy going to be the QB? It's very interesting. It's like a reverse Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick situation.
It really, yeah. Well, that's why I brought up Harbaugh on the hot hand, right? Because
Yep.
remember when Alex went out and Kaepernick stepped in his first start against the Bears, right? He threw, I think it was 20. They won 20-0 or something
Yep.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Beat the Bears
Alex
in the snow.
in the snow, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, and
Or the Patriots in the snow.
you
Or
tell you the Patriots, yeah. The
yeah,
Bears were
Patriots.
at home, and the Patriots stay
Yeah.
in the snow.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's I mean, my background's not up here because I have C-Max the autograph, but I have Michael James right now. C-Max on your side, both 23s. But anyways, so it's interesting to see kind of how it's all going to shape out because, like you said, the parallels between Alex Smith and a Colin Kaepernick, the parallels obviously between the two goats of the franchise, Montana and Young, right? These two, right? Obviously the
Mm-hmm.
most legendary, backup and starting Q quarterback tandem of all time.
Yep.
I mean, no, or just I guess roster of all time. It's always been just like a recurring theme with the 49ers for some reason. It's always
Yeah.
been,
But they've
you know,
never had two young quarterbacks like this that, that could potentially ball out. But I think it's all speculation at this point until we see Trey play, right? And if
and
Trey
yeah,
doesn't look the part, it's going to be Purdy. So
and you see that's the thing. I think prior to this last season, before the emergence of Brock Purdy, it was a lot of uncertainty and question marks behind a Trey. A lot of people in the franchise who are basically in the Trey camp, basically stated, yeah, I mean, obviously, like you look at Josh Allen, Trey has the same skill set. You can definitely, roll with him, ride with him, because if you look at Josh Allen's first 2 years of Buffalo, they were just abysmal, right?
mm-hmm.
Turnover machine, wasn't really feeling the game, wasn't really reading well. And then obviously that third year is kind of where he emerged and he led the Bills to an AFC Championship game the first time in 25 years.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think if Trey can figure it out, but again, I think it's going to really come down to, obviously how well he develops, but how well the playbook is tailored, for his skill sets, because I think, I mean, that's, to your point, right? I mean, he has two potential starters looking over his shoulder because, he doesn't have he doesn't have a sample size or a body of work that's convincing enough for anyone to say, okay, even if he comes back, if his injury comes back, he's starting. So
100%. 100%.
100%. So, all right, let's switch gears over to the to NBA. Let's talk about your Warriors. I think did they win yesterday? Or did they lose? They win.
They lost to the Clippers on was it Wednesday?
Oh yeah, on Wednesday I watched that
Wednesday
game.
night.
It's
Yeah, they
8
lost
straight
it.
losses on the road.
Yeah,
The worst road
oof.
loss. Okay, let me pass it over to you. What do you think about the Warriors this year?
Man, that's you know me. I love them, but they're hard to watch on the road, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing on the road, man. I don't get it. Like it's just night and day. Like they don't try on defense. They leave 3-point shooters open. They make stupid turnovers. I got the hat switch. All right, I see you. I don't know what they do, man. It's just so perplexing. What are they doing on the road? And maybe it's for lack of motivation. Maybe it's it's just they're just not motivated to perform on the road, and maybe they're just waiting for the playoffs to kick it up a gear. But it's hard to kick it up a gear when all season long you've been just shit on the road, and and if you and I mean the only two teams that they're better than on the road are the Spurs and the Rockets, both who are firmly entrenched in like the bottom 3 of the NBA, and they're tied with the Pistons. So it's a concern, man, heading into the playoffs, especially, you're going to have, if you're going to try to win a series, you're going to have to most likely do it on the road, especially if you're, below the 5 seed or below. So, it's going to be a tough one for the Warriors this year, I think. And they don't have depth. Wiggins has been missing, and I no idea when he comes back, what's going on with him. So that's another, element of this. And they got to get their shit together on the road. We'll find out tonight how they do against Atlanta with no Draymond, maybe no Steph. So we'll see, man. It's good if they go 1-4 on this road trip, it's considered a success, which is the craziest thing I've ever said in my life. Like go 1-4 on a road trip and it's a success. So it's gonna be a tough road ahead of us. Ideally, we start winning some road games here before the playoffs, and we get our shit together. We lock down D. I mean, when you're giving up 130 points on the road every night and Steph's dropping 50 and you're still losing, like shit, man, you're not gonna win the playoffs either. So that's my thoughts on the Dubs.
Yeah, I think Steph is the only player at the age of 35 to average 36-6 or 36-5, something crazy like that. I think
Yeah,
at this,
and he's shooting that 50, 90, 40 or something like that, right?
Yeah, he's having a 50, 90, 40 on 36, and that's just ridiculous. So it's like, I mean, it's obviously, I mean, the team is not what it used to be, but Steph is basically beating Father Time like LeBron James. So, it's interesting. It's very interesting to see kind of I mean, but again, it's sports, right? I mean, you're not going to have. I think the issue with the Warriors are the young players such as Kaminga and these other guys. And you traded Wiseman, and you lose that size inside, right? And the defense, like you said, the defense is just lacking, and that's obviously we're going to talk about now the number 2 seed in the West, the Sacramento Kings, baby. But anyways, the Warriors, I mean, essentially, that's also an Achilles for the Kings.
Exactly. And
yeah.
And I was just gonna say that for the Warriors, like when you're forced to play Steph and Jordan Poole together, that is an absolute killer defensive combination in the sense that your team is gonna get murdered.
Yeah.
Like teams are just gonna go put Steph and Poole in the pick and roll every time. They're gonna make them guard guys. That's where the Warriors are getting killed. But it's weird at home. That combination doesn't kill them as much as it does on the road. So I don't know, but. Anyways, let's talk your Kings now.
All righty, let's switch gears. The Kings yesterday got their 42nd win of the season by beating the Brooklyn Nets at home. Sorry, on the road at Brooklyn. And De'Aaron Fox continued his streak of double-double games Domantas Sabonis continued his streak of 20 of double-double games. He's now, I believe, tied with DeMarcus Cousins for the most 20-20 games in franchise history with 4 on the season. He's on pace to become the franchise leader in rebounds if he keeps it up at this pace for the next couple, I think 3 seasons. After 1 season, it's been incredible to see his impact as an inside and obviously just being like that glue in the middle. And obviously De'Aaron Fox, clutch, Mr. Clutch kept it going. I mean, well, he kept it going, and he pretty much extends his clutch record streak to, I believe, 183 points. The next leading scorer in clutch, I believe, is DeMar DeRozan with 138. So pretty much you can hand over that inaugural Jerry West Award to De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, we talked about last time you were here. You basically said De'Aaron Fox being disrespected, and he's gone to the All-Star game, and he didn't really do much at the All-Star game, but it doesn't matter. Since the All-Star break, the Kings are tied with the Bucks for the best record at 9-2 since the All-Star break. So obviously Malik Monk, in my opinion, NBA Sixth Man of the Year. Walter Kessler, who got the DPOG, or sorry, I think it wasn't Walter Kessler who got the DP. Yeah, I think it was Walter. I don't know. It was Malik or Walter. One of them got the defensive player of the game yesterday. But I mean, I do think Walter Kessler has been a great free agency acquisition. His length, his size.
You mean Kessler Edwards?
Sorry, wasn't he Walter Kessler? Why did I say Walter Kessler? Kessler Edwards. Who's Walter Kessler? I don't even
Walker
know.
Kessler is the guy on Utah.
Oh,
he's the rookie on Utah. Yeah.
I was like, okay, my apology. And the Kings play Utah in 2 more days. So, sorry, two games after tomorrow. So, I mean, I think let's talk about the Kings. The Kings are 42-27. The first winning season since 2006, they basically snapped the NBA record longest losing streak of consecutive sub 500 seasons at 16. They also basically the team who that second longest streak is the Kings with 93-98 or 83-98. And after they got Quick Weber, they basically went on a consecutive, I guess, a playoff streak of 8 consecutive playoff appearances. The third was the Detroit Pistons. I'm seeing something special in this team because they're a young team. This is their first season together. A lot of stands or a lot of NBA fans on Twitter basically saying first round knockout for the Kings. But I personally think that with their offense being the top 5 offense in the league, even though the defense rating is in the bottom 25th percentile or the 25 out of 30s, like that's the bottom 90th percentile of teams, I think that their fourth quarter defense has definitely been stalwart, and the stats say that I believe that they're in top 5 or top 10 in fourth quarter defense and rating and also points allowed. So what is your take on the Sacramento Kings right now as a unit, and what are your predictions if they keep up this production?
Yeah, I think they got a pretty solid young core there with Fox and Sabonis, and you got Keegan Murray out there. I think Fox, I think he's in the conversation to be even a all NBA team. So
yeah,
he might be third all NBA, maybe second all NBA. But I think he's definitely in the conversation there with his level of play. I think Fox has always been a guy, you could see he has it. And I've always been a De'Aaron Fox fan since he was drafted. I have a buddy who, is a Lonzo Ball fan. And, we used to go, I was like, no, man, D Fox. And he'd be like, no, Lonzo Ball. I'm like, no, bro, D Fox. So glad to see I came out on top on that argument there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Kings are young. The playoffs is a different game, and, they won't know what they remind me a lot of the upstart Warriors, right? Under Mark Jackson. Great, the Warriors had the reverse problem where they were really good defensively, but, offense was kind of a little bit of a struggle for them in the sense that they couldn't figure out their fourth quarter offense, things like that. So the Kings remind me a lot of that team. Like just, they're on the rise, they're playing well. I think, maybe a second round exit is probable for the Kings here, just given their lack of experience in the playoffs. But yeah, they play great. They've been playing great in the regular season. Sabonis has some playoff experience, but that's the only guy here on the roster. Barnes, obviously, I forget about Harrison Barnes. He has finals experience. He's been on that. He was on those Dubs teams. So, you got two guys kind of leading the way there. But I think this primes this roster primes Sacramento to be making very long playoff runs for many years. And maybe make it a championship run at some point. I think they are missing maybe one more guy. One more guy. I think they need one more guy to kind of get him into that championship contending thing. Keegan Murray shows flashes. He's not all there yet. He disappears from some games. He kind of comes on strong other games. I think he's gonna struggle in the playoffs because being a rookie, it's really hard to get going in the playoffs. But you're gonna need to ride that combo of the Sabonis and Fox pick and rolls to kind of get you anywhere. But I think I don't think first round exit. I think Kings make it past the first round. Second round is probably where they kind of struggle. They meet, I don't know who they end up playing, but they meet a more tested team, right? Like maybe like the Grizzlies or something like that have been tested in the playoffs, that have gone through the playoffs before. Even though the Grizzlies themselves are an up and coming team, but now they've been kind of battle tested here in the playoffs a few years. So I think kind of that's the same trajectory the Kings are on. They just need to get battle tested here, and then they're gonna be. You're gonna see them in the playoffs for many years to come, unless someone gets hurt or something. They make some sort of dumb trade later in the years. But keep Fox, keep Sabonis, let Keegan Murray grow. Go out, get sign one or two pieces, and you got yourself a pretty solid team that's going to be top 4, top 5 in the West every year.
Over under 50 wins
this year.
How
many games left we got?
13.
And how many wins they got right now?
42.
I give them over.
Yes, sir.
Over. I think they get to 51. I think they get to 51 at least.
Me too. I think 50 to 51. It's funny because what you just predicted, I called on Jim Rome's show back in November after they obliterated the Nets. And basically, I said, the Kings, they're going to get over 50 wins and they're going to get in the playoffs. They can win a playoff series and they can run the table. And then Jim Rome, basically, after I hung up, he basically said to his listeners, he said, I did not say they're going to run the table. I did not say they're going to get, all these 50 wins or anything. But he said the caller, he wasn't unreasonable. He said, he said basically he said the Kings are definitely in a position to where they can get to that point and they can win a playoff series. And literally, like I just predicted, they are in a position to win 50 games and win a fucking playoff series. So, I mean, I really think it's interesting because, you also have guys like Kendrick Perkins and others who are basically stating the Kings are the favorites to make it to Western Conference Finals. And the West.
But you got to take whatever Kendrick Perkins says with a grain of salt. So,
well, absolutely.
It feels like a jinx now that Kendrick Perkins told you guys.
Well, we're not predicting that anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if they can find a way to get out of the second round and somehow make it. If they can go deeper, if they can find a way, like you said, experience, right? But they do have the Harrison Barnes. But I do agree with your comparison. I feel like they're the upstart Warriors, not the We Believe team, but the actual current Warriors, the upstart. Steph
like,
Curry. You know what I mean?
Back in like 2013, started showing flashes, like they're
Correct.
coming up on the up and up. So
correct, yeah. De'Aaron Fox, I don't know why, it just reminds me so much of that Steph Curry year, and then. Obviously, the Warriors lost to the Spurs, who ended up winning the champion or losing the finals, but then winning the championship the following season in the second round. And then not the season after, but the following season, like what you said, at Iguodala, what happens? Then they end up winning the championship next year. So
exactly, and I think that's what's missing for the Kings, right? They need that kind of, that veteran kind of in his prime who can kind of bring this team together, and that's what they're missing. I'm not sure if the NBA reseeds, but it would look like to me first round, based on if these standings hold, but these standings are changing every day. They either play like the Warriors, Timberwolves, or Mavs based on the play on game, all that stuff. Should be easy enough for the Kings. The team you probably want to avoid is the Warriors if they are battle tested, right? And that's the team you don't want to face. But Timberwolves, Mavs, Lakers, you guys will take care of them, easy business. It's that second round, man. I think you either end up with a matchup against the Grizzlies, Suns, Clippers, Warriors. Those are that's where it gets a little tougher, right? And if the Warriors struggle on their road, on the road, then you guys are fine. But Sacramento should not treat Sacramento like the road. It's like literally 2 hours away. So,
but Golden One Center is a very difficult place to play. You gotta give it that.
That's true. So that's the thing, right? Like when you run into if you run into a team like the Suns in the second round, like shit, that's gonna be tough, right?
Yeah.
Grizzlies, I would say would be another one. Clippers, Warriors, less tough, but still, for a team that's not been battle tested in the playoffs, that's gonna give them some run for their money, right? So that's why I think first round pretty easy. I think you guys sweep out of the first round, depending on who you play. Maybe a gentleman sweep, but I think that's the Kings can do that first round, and then second round is really where they're gonna get battle tested here.
Shout out to your boy, I guess fellow UC Davis alum Sulman Haque was at the game, the courtside seats. So
he's UC Davis, man, UCD.
Yeah,
Aggies. I was there with him.
Yeah.
He was like a couple years ahead of me.
Yeah.
We used to see each other, but yeah, he has been a lifelong Kings fan. So
Yes.
no one questioned his King fandom.
I still remember we went on First Take and Stephen A. Smith asked, who's the greatest player of all time, and he said Mitch Richmond, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Hey man, he's loyal to his soil, so
yeah,
exactly.
It's crazy when I saw him in the NBA All-Star game, celebrity game, not too long ago, or was it 6 years ago, right? And he was just draining those threes. I was like, holy shit, the boy can ball.
He definitely worked on that. For sure.
Yeah.
Because he knew he was going to be in the celebrity game. He worked on that. We used to play occasionally at the Arc sometimes, and he liked to jack it up, but he definitely worked on his threes for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, final thoughts to close out this episode. Kings definitely going to make it out of the first round. We're going to go over 50 wins. Nice free agency draft. We already kind of went over that. Any closing thoughts?
No, man. I think, Niners are primed again to kind of make it to another NFC championship game. So let's get it. Let's hope Trey doesn't flame out. Let's hope Purdy comes back healthy if Trey does flame out. And that's it, man. And, we'll see what happens in the playoffs in the NBA. Kings, I think they got a good chance to come out of the first round here. I don't think the Warriors make it past the second round either. So I'm not being biased in any way, shape, or form. I also feel personally the Warriors will struggle to get past the first round. And if they get past the first round, they're definitely out in the second round. So those are my personal thoughts. I think Kings kind of in the same boat here because they need to be battle tested a little bit.
Yes, sir. All righty then, folks. You heard it first. Kings over 50 wins. Niners NFL draft. Sulman, thank you for doing today, bro. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Later.